Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Reformed Baptist Church of Louisville podcast. I am once again joined by Pastor Jim, and today is actually going to be a little bit different from some of our other topics in that we are going to talk about relationships, not relationships between friends, relationships between guys and ladies. Special friends, exclusive friends. One might even say girlfriends.
Ooh, all right.
So, let's just start off with you when you were my age. Maybe a little bit younger when you were back at Bible college.
Yeah.
What was the dating scene? What was it like with guys and girls interacting with each other?
Okay, so I'll back up even a little bit when I was younger than you, which I was once, long ago. I was converted in at the end of, I guess, what would be considered middle school, the end of middle school, beginning of high school, ninth grade.
Yeah.
And I think it was part of the way I was put together. I think also some of it flowing from the kind of home that I had. I was really love hungry for a time, So I wanted to have a girlfriend. Girls were not interested in me, by and large. There were a couple that were, but by and large, not the ones I was interested in or I wanted to like. So
Tale as old as time.
Tale as old as time, Kevin. Yep. You can play the violin while we talk about some of this. But but the fact that I'd become a Christian, limited that I wanted to, if I was going to have a relationship with somebody, I wanted it to be somebody who loved the Lord and thought that we should, I was aware fairly early on of the principle that Paul talks about to the Corinthians of not being unequally yoked together with an unbeliever. And so that if I had an interest in an unbeliever, I recognized ultimately, even though, again, at this time I'm 15, 16, 17, that this can't go, ultimately towards something like marriage. I can't begin a relationship because I can't really be married to somebody who's not a believer. So fast forward, I go to Bible college in South Carolina. And I was aware, I went there to train for ministry. I went there to learn the Bible, but I don't know if I thought about it as much as when I realized what happened when I got there.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was thinking to myself, Jim, there's going to be a whole bunch of Christian girls here who love the Lord, who want to be in ministry, want to marry guys in ministry, and it's like Christmas morning, but when I got there, certainly, it didn't take long before I got there, and I realized that there's a lot of young ladies here that I could be friends with, and that if something more than that were to begin to happen, more exclusive, or begin to pursue something, that it would lead to marriage, which eventually did happen. Right. So when I was, I guess it must have been in my junior year, I met a woman named Becky who would eventually become my wife, and we began to see one another. The Bible college I went to had some rather strict rules and things like that, so you couldn't pair off, and you had to have a chaperone until you were senior, things like that. We began a relationship, and so that ultimately, obviously, some years later led to marriage. She was a year behind me. We broke up for a time. She ended things, not me, and. No, that's true. But and we got back together shortly before I graduated, and then I went on to seminary. She finished school, and then she did a year of grad school, got a master's in South Carolina, University of South Carolina. I went on to seminary in New Jersey, and then she came up, moved up to the area. We got engaged, and before my last year of seminary, we got married. So that's just a little bit, So I went from a place where I felt like I was in a public high school, where there were certainly girls I liked. I liked lots of girls. I never struggled in that area. I really had a lot of disappointment, a lot of heartache, but I also knew that there were some that we could never really pursue anything because I was committed at that point to the Lord and wanted to please Him in that area of my life.
So when you were engaging with these girls and interacting with them, and what were those interactions like? Because nowadays it's in certain churches, certain Christian settings, it's if a guy and a girl are talking, they're probably dating. Like, you can't just engage in normal conversations. Was that different back in the day?
Well, it was a college setting, and so it wasn't And there were so many different people and so many different environments there that I guess there was some of that. People saw people talk, "Oh, are you interested?" It was always, I think there was often that. "Oh, are
Yeah.
you interested?" And that's high school, that's
Sure,
college.
sure.
It's almost anywhere. It happens in the workplace. If a man starts talking to a woman in the workplace, somebody's going to say, "Hey,
Yeah.
you interested in her? Do you want to ask her out?" Something like that. I think that's just naturally going to happen. That's just going to be part of life together.
Yeah.
And so we have to recognize that as part of the reality. It's not just church subculture. I think sometimes
Sure.
people say, "Oh, well, that's just the way church is." I don't think it's unique to church culture.
Right.
I do think sometimes people in church, particularly older people, need to be a bit more mature and hold their thoughts to
Yeah.
themselves, not make things more difficult
Yeah.
because it can feel awkward and people can feel a pressure
Yeah.
that they don't need to feel when
Yeah.
they begin to have a conversation. And one thing Kevin I've said, and you went to one of the singles conferences I spoke at, and I think I said a little something there. I generally, if I'm in that environment, I'm going to come to a singles conference. I always try to begin by saying, "Look, I want to encourage you all to recognize here that whatever else happens this weekend, maybe you're going to meet the person you're going to marry."
Right.
I've been at conferences where people met the person they're going to marry. They started their relationship. In fact, we've got people at our church who started their relationships at conferences I spoke at in the past.
Yeah. My sister got married.
Your
to a man
sister
she met
did
at a
that. That's
conference.
right. I wasn't
Yeah.
even thinking of that's the
Right.
most recent notch in my belt.
There you go.
But I often will say in that situation, listen, you have brothers and sisters here. You have people that you share a deep common bond with Christ with, and that you can enjoy each other. You're brothers and sisters. And I think that recognition of being a brother and a sister carries with it that that there's a purity that takes part in that. Paul said to Timothy, look at the older women as mothers, younger women as sisters. And he does say with all purity. But he's not just saying avoid, this anything that would, smack of improper sexuality.
Right.
In a good family, you have two sisters. You have two sisters and a brother. Is your situation. Hopefully, in that home, that there was a lot of fun together. That there's openness together. There's affection toward each other.
Yep.
And to say she's like my sister should mean something very positive.
Right.
We use it in the Christian world almost as a negative. I just view you as a sister. Like, well, that's really positive because, that's one of the closest relationships in the world.
Right.
I have 3 girls and 1 boy. My girls and my boy, they love each other. They love their brother. Their brother loves them. He loves them. And there's nothing inappropriate. There's nothing there's not at all with that. But he enjoys them. He talks to them. He's open with them. He has fun with them. And I wish more men and women, young men and young women, could enjoy each other on that level. And because I do think that very often the best relationships and the most lasting relationships come when all of a sudden you start to see somebody who you've always enjoyed, always been easy to talk to, but all of a sudden you see them in a way that maybe you didn't see them before. And it's like, oh, she's really lovely.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I could see, I always just put her into the sister zone or the sister category. But as I look now, I see something more there that is really delightful and really pleasurable here. And so I think sometimes there can be, because we as Christians have a high view of relationships and a high view of marriage and a high view of the family, that there's an undue pressure to make to carry this to the nth degree rather than allow things to begin and take place more naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, and growing up in the church, I feel like it's been mixed in. There's certain girls that you can interact with and not really worry about anything happening with. And then there's some that you avoid because you used to think, if I talk to them, they'll think I'm into them. And there's this all weird stuff going on. And I think that actually bleeds even up into young adults. Again, I'm 24, my age now. Why is that still a thing? Aren't we all adults here? And I just find it's a
Yeah,
very
and I think
interesting
again, maybe
thing.
somebody again like myself, or
Yeah.
so when I go to these conferences, as I think I was saying, I don't know if I got off track with that, but to say, listen, just enjoy each other. The fact that he comes and sits next to you doesn't mean he wants to marry you.
Right.
It may just mean he wants to get to know you better. It may be that you're going to start a really good friendship, and you're going to really encourage each other for maybe months or years to come, and you're going to have a really good friendship that you're afraid to have because you're afraid of where it's going to go, rather than just enjoying it for where it is right now. And so that's one thing that I would say. And now it's interesting, we mentioned, so the singles conference that you were at with me back just a few weeks ago now.
Yeah.
There's an interesting situation where most of the men were younger men,
Right.
your age, and maybe even a bit younger.
Right.
And the young ladies were like all over 30 or something like that.
Yeah,
or maybe
28,
not all of
28
them.
plus.
28
So,
plus,
yeah.
28, 29, 30, and some even more than that. That helped you, right?
I thought it was absolutely wonderful.
Because you were able to simply view this as a friendship and as a sister in Christ, somebody who's valuable, not just somebody who may be your wife and the mother of your children, but a real full-orbed human being that you could just encourage, and because it removed that pressure. And and so that's the question, I guess, Kevin. I don't know. I mean, have you wrestled through this? How can we remove that pressure and just enjoy what's intended and really can be with purity? This is a dear sister. And that we should be able to have a really delightful sibling relationship in the church that that may again eventually then, Lord willing for you, whether it's somebody here or you meet somebody somewhere else, your brother you have one brother and one sister that met their siblings here at church. Siblings. They met their spouses here at church. Right. There's one.
We actually met at home first, and then we went to church together.
So you would have had, but in those things, I don't know that it was immediate attraction between them. In some cases, they knew each other from the time they were probably 15, 16, or years old, and didn't pair off or anything like that. I know for your brother and your sister-in-law, it was quite a bit later, and just through a social event that they began to see each other. Again, saw each other in a different way. Saw each other, knew each other, talked to each other, but never considered that there would be something deeper until some sparks came out as a result of that.
Yeah. At the conference, I think the big thing was it helped that I had somewhat an interest in someone else too. So someone here. So I flew away to go have interest in somebody here. So that was a great idea on my part. But that, and that the women were what an absolutely great bunch of women that were at that conference. And it kind of saddened me to see that there were no guys that were catching their eye or that they had any interest in. But that makes me kind of go into another question, but I want to finish this thought of, I think that having a big age gap, kind of viewing someone as not really a prospect, you lose that whole intensity. And I hate to use that word, but it kind of is like you go to a singles conference and it's like there's this pressure to find my person. But then once that's removed and you just have a good time with everyone, you just engage in casual conversation. I absolutely loved it. And again, I didn't meet anyone of real interest, but I thought it was just all these women and even the guys were great, and I just had a really good time. But
I enjoyed watching you interact. I really felt you did a commendable job in being friendly and even with the recognition that, and maybe again, as you say, this may have helped. But you weren't getting anything out of it other than being a brother to them. It wasn't like, oh, I'm laying the groundwork for what I hope to make my move later on. There wasn't anything like that for you.
Yeah, and so that kind of sort of some of the things that I saw at the conference, and this is not a conference problem, this is just a people problem. What do you think are some of the reasons that there are a lot of single older women and they look at certain guys and they don't really have any interest? Is there something there with us, with both just us men, that there's something that has changed, that women are.
Okay, so here's several things. My opinion, my thoughts. First of all, generally in churches, and very, very often in a church, there will be, not by a lot, but at least by a little, there'll be more women than men. And so it's far more common to meet an older Christian woman where you have the thought, I have the thought, others have had the thought, what's wrong with guys?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, she's a lovely Christian woman. It's not just she's got a great personality or whatever. I mean, she's in every way. She may be an attractive woman, an accomplished woman, and when I say attractive, I mean in all the ways that is. There's and yet here she is single.
Yeah.
And sometimes you see girls in their their late 20s or 30s, and at that stage of life, there aren't as many guys. So here's generally speaking, and I'm not so hang on.
I'm ready for
Kevin,
it.
You're ready for it.
Yeah.
Very often, Christian men that have an idea of what they want to do in life, they're pursuing their career. They're attached to a church. They're godly men. They're ready, and they're ready to pursue a lifelong relationship. They want to be married. They want to be responsible. They want to be the guy who pays the bills, is ready to keep home, ready to be a dad. And so very often that guy is married by the time he's, I'll say 25. I didn't get married till I was. So I'm giving you 2 more years. I didn't get married till I was 26.
Okay.
I wanted to get married when I was 25. My father-in-law said no. He said wait 1 more year.
Okay.
That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Because a lot of good came out of that waiting.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get married then. I knew I wanted to be married, and I was trying to put myself in a position to be marriageable.
Yeah.
And part of being in a position to be marriageable is a degree of maturity. It's a degree of responsibility. It's a degree of being able to be financially independent. Yeah. And I think to some degree being able to capably lead in a home in a godly, Christ-like, gracious way. Some guys are too immature. Some guys are just too irresponsible. So I'm going to tell something. It's going to sound terrible, and that is very often I meet a Christian girl who's 30 or older, and I think, what's wrong? And sometimes I meet a guy who is a single guy at 30, and I go, oh, I get it.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, guys, but sometimes guys lack confidence. And this is a whole other thing we could get into, Kevin. I do think that there are some girls and guys who could have a good relationship with each other.
Yeah.
There may not be all the sparks and all the chemistry.
Yeah.
And we sometimes put certain other things in place that the Bible doesn't and that other societies don't. And there are places in the world that have arranged marriages and all of the rest, so that, the way we do it is not necessarily the only way to do it, the right way to do it, only biblical way to do it. I think that there can be a variety of ways in which that's done. But, sometimes people are not willing, if they don't feel the sparks right away, they're not willing to pursue a friendship, get to know somebody. Obviously, you can't force anybody.
Sure. Sure.
I think there has to be some degree of attraction. The line that I've used when I've spoken on this issue is, listen, you're going to have to kiss that face for a long time. You better enjoy it, So I think there needs to be a degree of attraction.
Yeah.
I think you ought to have an ability. I'm already assuming the generals here, and that is you're both Christians.
Yeah.
I would say to any single Christian, you should only commit yourself to a growing godly person.
Right.
So growing godly person.
Yes.
I would say growing godly person, committed to their church, a person of integrity. And then as you begin to look at some of the qualifications, I think a great place to find that is a place like Titus chapter 2. And then also in Paul's description of what a godly young person looks like when he says to Timothy, show yourself an example to the believers in faith and love and purity. That you see a person who has certain qualifications, certain qualities that you should be looking for. I think that a godly man is going to look for in a godly woman, and a godly woman should look for in a godly man. And so I think to be able to make yourself, in one sense, as attractive as possible if you're single and you want to be married, to be as attractive as possible to the kind of person you want to marry. And so I've heard sometimes, I remember hearing a girl who was a professing Christian. She said, Christian guys aren't interested in me at all, only men of the world are. They're really interested in me. And I thought, well, why is that? So what is it that makes, I think a Christian woman, I'll be careful here with this, is in many ways is very intriguing to a non-Christian man. In fact, there was actually a man in our congregation. This led to his conversion. He was older and single. He was at a wedding that we did here. His sister was getting married. And he met my wife. And he thought, that's the kind of woman I would want to marry. But I know I can't marry a woman the only kind of woman like that is a Christian woman. I'm not a godly man.
Yeah.
Therefore, I could not have a godly woman. And that actually, God used that to begin to stir his heart. And then sometime later, this was one of the things I met her at a singles conference that I spoke at. And I said, hey, there's a man in my church I'd like to introduce you to. Would you be okay if I took your picture and got your name and number, an email, and passed that on to him and see what the Lord would do? And she said, I'm willing to do that. And it led they just celebrated, I think, 25 years of marriage.
Wow.
So, there's some sweet things like that can happen as a result of it. But I think by and large, there may be there are things in a Christian woman that will attract a Christian man, and things in a Christian man that will attract a Christian woman.
Yeah.
And so to say, the more like Christ I am, the more the fruit of the Spirit I am, the more I work on those sins that would put me outside of the realm of being desirable. Like if I have a bad temper, if I'm cutting and condescending all the time, if I'm just mocking people left and right, I'm not an encourager. I'm not, that kind of a thing. I'm not committed to the Lord or to His Word or to prayer or to, that kind of thing. That a Christian woman is looking for somebody who's going to be able to eventually take care of them and be a great father to their children. And so there are going to be things in that, and it's okay. I should pursue the kinds of things that an excellent woman would want to see in a man, and for a woman as well to say, are there character traits that I can work on?
Yeah.
And Kevin, I'd be bold to say also, it might be for some that listen, there may even be some physical things that you should work on. If you're missing your 2 front teeth, maybe get dental implants.
Yeah.
If you could lose a little bit of weight, that would make you more attractive, whatever. I don't think that that's carnal and ridiculous. If you have a hygiene problem, you don't wash your hair regularly, or whatever else, your blue sports coat, it looks like the Swiss Alps or something like that. You might say, look, maybe I should get a dandruff shampoo. I have bad breath. My wife the other day said something about you need to get a breath mint. I've been almost paranoid since she told me that. And I have to make sure that but whatever it is that I can work on to, and then trust God. God is the giver of every good and perfect gift. I believe marriage is one of God's greatest gifts. It can be one of God's greatest gifts. It can also be it can be also a curse.
Right.
And your earthly happiness, in so many ways, is going to be tied to the character of the person that you marry. And so to marry well, to think well, choose well, is an important thing.
Yeah.
And I've said to some people, and I'll wrap up with this, Kevin,
Yeah.
is my little word of counsel to some. Fixate more on being the right person than finding the right person.
Right.
And I believe that the more we pursue Christ-likeness, and this could sound trite, that the more people see Christ in us, men and women, friends, whatever, the more attractive we are as friends. And the less of Christ we see, the more fruits of the flesh they see, the less attractive we will be to godly people. The more fruit of the Spirit they see. And to prayerfully cultivate those things. Concentrate more on being the right person, and believe God in His providence will bring the right person.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you very much for that. That's all we have for today's episode. We will catch you guys later. Bye.